Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take sources you send us, dig in, and pull out the key insights so you can get up to speed, quickly but thoroughly.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
And today, we're diving into something pretty fundamental to building wealth. The whole idea of owning a business. Why is it considered so, well, essential?
Right. We've got some clips here from Richard Medley's YouTube video, Wealth Principles Part 1. Someone sent this in. And our mission, really, is to unpack his argument for why business ownership isn't just like one way to get wealthy, but maybe even crucial for financial security, especially in, well, a capitalist system.
Exactly. He lays out some pretty clear principles.
Okay, let's jump in. Medley starts with this first principle, cash flow control. The idea that business owners just have more say over their income.
Yeah, precisely. And he connects it to things we're all feeling, right? Inflation, gas prices going up, all that stuff. His argument is if you're just an employee on a salary, you're kind of, stuck when those things happen, like being hit by waves without much control.
You definitely feel that pinch. Costs go up, your paycheck doesn't always follow. It can feel a bit helpless.
Exactly. But a business owner, Medley says, has levers they can pull. If their costs go up, they can potentially raise their prices.
Okay.
Or they can try to find more customers, sell more stuff, offer new services. They can actively do things to try and change their income situation.
It's a different mindset, isn't it? From just receiving income to actively sort of shaping it. There's definitely a power dynamic shift there.
For sure. And that control over the money coming in, that leads right into a second principle, which is taxes.
Ah, yes, taxes. Always a fun topic.
Well, Medley brings it up because it's such a common complaint, right? People feeling like they pay too much.
I mean, who doesn't feel that way sometimes?
Right. But he frames business ownership as a potential strategic response. He argues that business owners can access way more legal deductions than employees typically can.
Okay, and he gives examples, right? Like deducting costs for your car.
Yeah, if you're using it for the business, like meeting clients, or travel expenses for, say, industry conferences, things an employee usually just pays for out of pocket.
Right. And he even mentioned employing family members, like your kids.
He suggests that can sometimes be a legitimate way to handle certain family expenses as business costs. The key thing, and he stresses this, is that it's all about using the existing tax laws legally and ethically.
So it's not about dodging taxes, but structuring things properly to take advantage of the rules that are already there for businesses.
Exactly. And that ties back to cash flow, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Lowering your tax bill means you keep more of the money your business earns.
Yeah, definitely. Does it matter what kind of business it is, or is this pretty much across the board?
Well, the general principle of deducting legitimate business expenses applies widely. But the specifics can definitely vary. Like a sole proprietorship versus a corporation might have different rules or limits.
Right.
So it's always smart to, talk to a tax pro about your specific situation.
Good advice. Okay, so we have cash flow control, tax advantages. What's principle number 3? You mentioned it was thought-provoking.
Yeah, this one's about equity building and inheritance. This is where he really zooms out to the long term.
Okay.
He defines equity as basically the value you create and accumulate through your work, your time, skills, money invested. And then he asks the big question, who actually gets that value?
Right. If you work for a company, you put in the hours, the effort, the ideas, but the company owns the resulting value. The brand grows, maybe they develop intellectual property. That's the company's asset, not yours.
That's the core distinction he makes. As an employee, you trade time for money, but you're not building something you own, something that grows in value independently and that you can, sell or pass on later.
He had that analogy, the renting versus owning a house one. That really clicked for me.
That's a good one.
You rent for 30 years, pay a fortune, but at the end, nothing.
Yeah.
No asset. The landlord got all the appreciation. It really highlights the difference.
It does. And he builds on that with another analogy, the wealth as a relay race idea. I found that really compelling.
Me too. Explain that one.
So he pictures wealth building not as one person running a race, but as a team effort across generations, like a relay race.
Okay.
Each generation, great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, then runs their part of the race. The baton they pass is the wealth, the equity they've built. Now, if everyone in the family line is just an employee, Medley argues they each basically start from the same starting line, 0. There's no accumulated advantage passed down.
Because what do you pass down from a job, really? He kind of joked about, like, the corner office or employee of the month plaque. Nice, but not exactly inheritable wealth.
Exactly. But if, say, the great-grandparents started a business and passed it to the grandparents who grew it and passed it to the parents.
Then the next generation isn't starting from scratch.
Right. They get the baton, the business, the equity, the systems, the customers, much further down the track. Medley says maybe they start at, like, year 121 instead of year 0.
Wow. That really does put a different spin on things. It makes you think about legacy in a completely different way than just, climbing the corporate ladder.
It really highlights how ownership can impact things not just for you, but potentially for generations. That equity becomes a foundation.
Okay, that's powerful stuff. What's the fourth principle he covers?
The fourth one is about business credit.
Ah, okay. That can seem a bit confusing sometimes, the difference between personal and business credit.
Yeah, and he makes a clear distinction. The main advantage, he points out, is that business credit lines can often be much, much higher than personal ones.
Well, that makes sense. Businesses usually need more capital for operations or growth than an individual does.
For sure. But the really crucial point he makes, the one that probably surprises people, is about how using business credit affects your personal credit score.
How so?
He gives this example. Say you have a personal credit card with a $20,000 limit. If you use $15,000 of that high utilization ratio, like 75%, can really hurt your personal credit score.
Yeah, most people know that high balances on personal cards aren't great for your score.
Right. But then he says, if you have a business credit card with that same $20,000 limit, and you use, say, even the whole $20,000 for legitimate business expenses, that usage typically doesn't impact your personal credit score in the same negative way. The utilization isn't reported personally. That's a huge difference.
Okay, wait. So you can use potentially large amounts of business credit for your company's needs without tanking your personal creditworthiness.
Generally speaking, yes. That's the idea he presents. It gives businesses flexibility to invest and manage cash flow without the owner constantly worrying about their personal score taking a hit from business spending.
That sounds like a massive advantage, especially if you're trying to scale up.
It really can be. And he touches on the bigger picture, too, using this credit, essentially other people's money, strategically to grow the business, maybe hire people, buy equipment, whatever you need.
Right. Leverage.
Exactly. Now, building that business credit takes time, of course. You usually need a proper business structure, an EIN, and a history of paying suppliers, but the potential benefits are significant.
Okay, so let's recap Medley's argument. He's saying business ownership is key for wealth because of, 1, more control over your income, your cash flow.
2, significant tax advantages letting you keep more of that cash flow.
3, building actual equity, an asset you own and can pass on, like in that relay race analogy.
Right. And 4, access to business credit that can fuel growth without messing up your personal credit score.
Got it. Taken together, he's making a case that these aren't just nice perks, but almost fundamental requirements for getting ahead financially in the long run.
That's essentially his argument, yeah. That these principles are pillars for building real sustainable wealth and navigating the economic system effectively.
It's definitely a lot to chew on. A very compelling case from Richard Medley about why owning a business might be more than just a career choice, but a strategic wealth-building necessity.
Indeed. And he did mention at the end of the clip we saw that his next principle is about asset leveraging. So maybe something for us to look into for another deep dive.
Sounds good. Definitely worth exploring further. So for everyone listening, maybe take a moment to think about that baton analogy Medley used. Consider the baton you're holding right now. What kind of legacy, what kind of equity will it let you pass on?
Yeah, and what steps could you take maybe to build more of that transferable equity? It's a powerful question.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Hopefully, exploring these principles from Richard Medley has given you some valuable food for thought.